What a great day for Canada. What a fucking awesome morning we've all had. I assume anyone watching this knows the deal. The RAM has been cancelled. The RAM de l'Est has been cancelled. The spin that you're going to get, well, the spin that the government's fucking producing is that it's like we're taking over the project. But that's fucking impossible because it's not the government's. It's not possible for the government to take over the project. Like, we have a situation where there's this entity called the Caisse, they're building the project, and then the government's like, oh, we'll take it over. But how? The staff that work at the Caisse are, you know, focused on building it, employed by the Caisse. You can't just like tear the hundreds of people out of one organization and plop them into the government department. That's not going to happen. So it is being cancelled, which is terrible, obviously. The East are going to get there's this like patchwork of alternatives that are being pitched. You know, like, well, maybe we'll do this, we'll extend that line, maybe we're going to look at Laval. Anyway, that's a headline thing. Don't believe the fucking hype. It's absolute nonsense. There's no way that this isn't effectively a redo. Like, Reset may be inspired in some ways by what the groundwork that's been laid, but, you know, that's what we're dealing with. Obviously, I'm annoyed. Anyone who loves transit, you know, more than political, you know, biases and how transit should be disappointed today. This is a huge loss. Anyway, let's get into it. I assume I'm coming across. It'd be really funny if you guys are watching and I'm like, bah, 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 and you're like, he seems really angry. I'm going to try to not be too angry today, but this is obviously horrible. So, anyway, I assume at this point I would have gotten a, hey, I can't hear you. What the heck's going on? I will open up the old tube view and just check to see before I expend a lot of energy. Okay. I see myself dancing around, so it's probably all working. All right, and the audio seems to be going, so great. It's obviously been a while since I've done a live stream or anything on camera, so you know, it might be a little rusty. Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for letting me know. When I do like come on the stream, if you ever see me not making any noise, first person to tell me that you can't hear me, you know, thank you. So this is obviously a hot take. I don't think there's any other way to do it. Like, details will come out in the following days. I think it's well suited to a live stream because, you know, it's probably, my take's not going to age well. I'm interested to hear from you guys though, because I'm going to build a video out of this. I will try to build like a news video at the end of the week where I kind of like synthesize my anger into something that's a little more directed. But this, I guess, is kind of like my draft, you know? So if you hear things that you're like, I don't think that's true, well, you know, I've read as much as you. If you're into this stuff, I've just consumed the news for a couple of hours. I watched the presentation, you know, but I'm not, like, I'm just a regular person, so I will probably make some mistakes. So type them into the chat and like help me kind of get my message cleared up for people. So effectively what's happened here is the establishment has won. I think it was pretty clear, like, in the series that I've been doing on the case. The narrative is like, the case came along and, you know, they were given these powers to create these public-private partnerships, except they're a little different to the private partner you would usually have. In fact, they're a lot different. And today proves the fucking point in the videos of like, the public was in charge. You see how the public was in charge? Because it just got fucking cancelled by the public, you know? Like, it's like, it wasn't like we weren't locked into it, you know? But in the end, the case were like, hey, it's kind of like, we're only gonna do it if you guys want it. And because the politicians didn't want it, they didn't do it. So it's like already you're like, oh, okay, this seems a little different. It's almost like this actually was an accountable, publicly kind of controlled organization that we could, you know, overrule if we wanted to, you know. It's like, fuck. Anyway, so they came along, they were like, hey, we can build hey, we can build transit for you, just give us some vague kind of like, hey, maybe here and here, we'll kind of do the rest. So they did on the first phase out to the west of Montreal. They pieced together various pieces of infrastructure that were available and figured out like a model that would work where they'd get this return on investment over a few decades. Then the government has the right of first refusal to any sale and would eventually inherit the line. Very common. By the way, P3s effectively have been around for hundreds of years, and most of the world's great subway systems that were like built very early on, like Paris and London and New York, the lines were built by private companies that were given the right to build a line that solved a transportation problem. And all those fucking lines have ended up in the control of the transit agencies in those cities, because that's just kind of what happens over time. You know, it's like, okay, thanks for building the line. We'll take it from here. Long-termism sort of a thing, right? So it was always a little bit like the pushback against the REM was always a little absurd. You had these special interests, to be honest. The first that you'll see is like unions who were like, it's an automated system, that means there's less jobs. And so they kind of started churning out these blogs, getting the messaging going to oppose it. When the first phase of a REM came in, it was so quick and so surprising that people were just like, I can't believe this is happening. Oh, really? You're saying we're actually going to have an awesome transit system within 20 years? Not 20 years, 5 years? You know? And people kind of didn't get a lot of resistance because it was like blitzkrieg, you know? The thing went in so quickly. People would now, like if you look at the route, for example, one of the places it goes is this lovely little island in Laval called Ile Bigras. It's like this super high-end suburb. It has a train line through it, but you know, it's just commuting in the morning, coming out at night. These days, that would have gotten so much opposition from the general public, because it's like a train line past mansions sort of deal. But they just didn't really realize what was happening until it was too late. And now we're getting a REM out of it, and fuck those guys, you know? Like, it's like, that's great. That's what has to happen. That's how the thing works. The only reason that you get so much REM for such a great price is because it's an automated, grade-separated light rail system. This is the trade-off. Like, do you care about climate change or not? Like, this is what you have to do. We can't tunnel our way out of climate change, you know, until there's some sort of like amazing robot that like layers the wall and blah, blah, blah. This is how we address this shit. We build medium density cities and we build transit to the medium density. And yeah, it's just like, it's super disappointing when you're like, okay, so I guess we just, like the government, we have this problem as a society, we just can't do it, you know? Like we just can't take the fucking steps to actually do what we say we care about. It's all just blah, blah, blah from the politicians, and that's very concerning, and well, what about this, you know? Like, anyway, okay, so getting off track already. Anyone watching this will be laughing at me for the rant. I've got 17 more rants in this speech because pretty much every fucking point will set me off. Moving forward. So yeah, they said in the press release, like in the press conference today, they were like, moving forward, the major partners working in the province will be the Regional Transit Planning Agency for the ARTM, so the regional one, STM, the like agglomeration de Montreal's transit agency, the City of Montreal, and the province's transport ministry. So that is the establishment winning. That's the establishment. These are the assholes who have failed to get shit built for decades, and when they do build stuff, it's like, it's so fucking expensive. It consumes the entire like budget, and we get like a couple of stations on a metro line because they're in this fucking paradigm, because they're old as fuck, and they just operate in this like really unsophisticated, brute forcey way. Like, well, the plan we have is to build this, and it's like there's no interest in getting the costs down, no interest in getting it built quickly. I explained this in the videos. It's the slow, expensive problem. They kind of like, they have a grand design, you know, and then it kind of just gets compromised into something that's so expensive and so time consuming that it kind of can't survive the length that it needs to between governments to actually get built. And so it gets chipped down to like a very unambitious like extension of a line, something like that. The REM was awesome because it was like sensible and large and a big rethink of things. You know, it's like so exactly what we need. You know, so seeing this happen to it is like, you deserve what you fucking get, you know? So the first thing, and it is like, the first thing that they did in the like press conference when they're talking about what they're going to do, oh, we're not going to take it downtown. We're not going to take it downtown on the viaducts. You know, we're going to stop at the, I assume this is what they're going to do because it's the only way to make it happen. They're going to stop at the end, the terminus station of the Green Line. So great, they just made transit fucking worse. Who wants to, here's one option, the REM, and you go downtown and it takes you whatever amount of time. Here's another option, you have to transfer to the metro and take another 10 minutes to get downtown. The option that had viaducts was better for transit, you know, and the option that they're choosing is better for politics. I mean, I don't even know if it's better for politics. I mean, most people in Montreal want good transit, so it's better for getting elected and the ridings that like follow the routes where the like NIMBYs are going to be super motivated. But I mean, who even knows? And I mean, the fucking politicians, could they not sack up just a bit and be like, you know, this is what's right, and like have a like, I'm a principled politician and climate change is important and transit is important and we need the transit to get the housing built to relieve the housing crisis, and people who oppose this are just frankly running on an outdated model. Like, I don't even think that that's actually, that isn't actually viable. I think the problem is the politicians are just so fucking weak. Like, they're just such, like, they just fold. You know, it's like, a certain number of angry leaders come in and they're like, oh, okay, well, I want to get elected again. And our entire our entire political system seems to be just unhealthily obsessed with getting reelected. I mean, it is the primary reason that any politician is a politician, but it's almost like the value of anything that's a good idea is just so tiny compared to just the like, will I get elected? It's like this political system that just runs on like telephone poles, and it's like crap direct democracy. Like, we're getting to kind of get represented, but in a real warped way. Oh my God. Anyway, so should I take some of these? Yeah, just in case I'm not making any noise. Let's just check. Best case scenario at this point is that it ends up much worse, but still better than nothing. Realistic scenario is it just doesn't happen at all. Yes, realistically, what they're talking about is like some piecemeal network of transit. It's like, okay, so that's basically what's always being pitched, you know? It's like, well, we'll put a trolley here and we'll extend the Green Line a little bit. Like, that's what seems to be being talked about. You're coming in loud and clear from me in Omaha, Nebraska. We're your initial focus group. Yeah, let's focus group this. Here's hoping a REM is so successful that they have no choice but to build it later on. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, this is, I'll get to that point like further down. All right, gonna take a little sip of, you can imagine what that is. Okay, so here is, I guess, the fundamental dynamic with the establishment and this establishment way of doing things. I talk about this in the housing video, the first part of the housing video. So, you know, if you haven't seen that, check it out. Basically, across the board, this occurs. In the 60s, there's different eras for like the hotness of urban development. You know, I was just talking about this morning with Yute, and he brought up a point. It's like, oh yeah, that's a good point. In the early 1900s, it was like sanitation and fundamentals. Like, that was what it was all about. Like getting clean water, clean sewage, like health and like the health of the population, and cities like not killing people in large numbers, right? If you fast forward through to the 1950s and 60s, you had a kind of like, in the 50s, it was like, we got to get housing built for the boomers and the veterans. And then it was moved into kind of like a highway demolition. Cities are fundamentally mostly about transport, you know, like if you play City Skylines or whatever, it's basically a transportation planning game. We don't really have too hard a time like getting electricity to doors and piping water and stuff, but transport, moving around these metropolises we built, that's the challenge. So in the 60s, they were like, the future is the car. We're going to need highways. We need wider and wider highways. And they bowled neighborhoods over to put in these massive highway projects that like Montreal has, Toronto has, Vancouver has, the whole fucking world had them at that point. And they're horrible. Like, you're talking about, here's a neighborhood and you have to walk for like, you know, one side of a neighborhood's here, one side of a neighborhood's here, and you have to walk for like 5 minutes crossing multiple roads underneath an overpass that's cold and dark and smells like pee to get to the other side of your neighborhood that was traditionally just like all part of the same thing, right? And it ruined neighborhoods. And of course, they went through where there was the path of least opposition, which is like low-income neighborhoods. So there's the people of color and like all that stuff happened, right? So what happened in the like, you know, 70s, 80s was there was this like, hey, wait a minute, bit of pushback, and it started in various cities. The first highways got protested and resisted, and people noticed like, yeah, this is basically like a kind of racist way of building cities, or this is a way of building cities that doesn't really work. For these highways, no matter how many we build, we just can't seem to get the traffic down. And people started to understand that this was a stupid idea. And that's where the old fucks who are opposing the REM come from. These university professors, these like baby boomers, they are products of an era where the hero and the fight was against these large government top-down projects that didn't involve the community. And so their like worldview is like public consultation, everyone needs to be on board, you know, resist big plans, this stuff's a disaster, it's proven itself to be a failure again and again. That's the like mindset that they have. And it's really important to remember that like people don't realize that they've become the old fuck. You know, they think that people are always kind of in their heads in their 20s, the person in the righteous person who's like fighting for a just cause or whatever, right? And they are still fighting. They think that they're in the right, but they're not. Now they're the old fucks who, like young people, the yimbies like me, who are trying to, and I assume most of my audience, who are trying to get these things built that are really important, have to are pushing back against. You know, it's the pendulum swing of time. We're now like coming back down into hopefully a bit more of a like, you know, local say is really good, but it can't be everything, because it turns out that when you make everything local, locals generally say, no, I don't want it. Do it somewhere else. And everyone just kind of, no, you do it, until it doesn't happen. And that's what has happened with the REM. So we kind of live in this kind of should society of like, oh, they should, da-da-da. And it just doesn't, it's just not connected to the realities of what we need to do to get shit built, you know? Like we've just, like these fucking guys have failed us for my entire life. I'm sick of fucking waiting for transit to be built. And when it does, it's such a fucking arduous task, you know? Like it just takes so long and so little gets built. And we always do, oh, we should upzone, we should blah, blah. And of course we should, but we just haven't, our political system doesn't let that occur, you know? So when the REM came along and the Caisse came to do it, you're like, okay, well, maybe this will work. Maybe having a large, well-funded entity with its comms department and engineers that moves so quickly that the NIMBYs can't spin up fast enough to resist it. Maybe this is a way to, you know, short-circuit this system. Maybe there's a kind of a different route around it. And it worked for the first phase, but by the second phase, it's too late. Like, the NIMBYs were ready, and the union's blog posts had kind of percolated through the opposition, and this is what we get. Okay, so, oh, more things. Sad for the REM list. What's going on with Valerie Planted? Well, she has planted her flag. Is it possible, though, that this frees up financing for the CDPQ to do projects somewhere else, like in the South Shore? Yeah. Okay. So this is part of what's a bitch, right? Part of why it's so sad. I think that's on my. It's a point further down. I'll get there. Lowell, Vancouver will take the Caisse money for transit, please, and thank you. Yeah. Well, you know, like they got to find something else to do. I feel part of the problem is how many headlines are about NIMBYs that don't like it. When's the last time you saw an article that's like 2,000 people like the REM? Yeah, and I mean, I've got, good. I got that point there. We'll get there. I bet a ton of people that would like the REM aren't even aware of it's happening, since unless you're against it or a super transit enthusiast, you probably aren't even aware it's happening. Yeah, I mean, I think that really most people only started to key in when they saw the viaducts go up, you know? And then your first interaction with a REM is a viaduct going up, which is kind of negative, right? You're like, hey, rather than like, oh, that's going to solve this problem. Also, like you said, there's just this issue of like the concentrated harm distributed benefit, you know, where like most people are like, if you could have a referendum, like, do you want to build it? Most people would be like, yes. And the polling shows that, you know, like 70% of Montrealers are in favor. But the people who are negatively impacted by it, they're in swing ridings, so they matter to the provincial politicians, and they're also so passionate that they kick up such a fucking fuss that when journalists are doing their, like, oh, I'm going to write a story, it's like, who are you going to listen to? The person's like, who's like, oh, I like the REM. Or the person who's like, the REM is trying to take over the government. You know, like they just drown out. They just drown out anyone else. And the thing is, when you're a journalist, you want to have like a clear expression of a view, right? You can't have someone who's like, you do this thing, you know, and you see it all the time in articles. It's the black says black, white says white, you know? Like, if you're not super sure about the topic, and generally the press try to be neutral, they will say like, this smart guy over here says this smart guy over here says that. You can make up your mind, you know, because they don't want to, as an outlet, align themselves too strongly with one side of the argument or the other, because that will alienate readership, right? So the issue is, with the NIMBYs, they are letting you know. But with the people who are pro, like REM, like we only just got fucking going like a couple of months ago, really. Like you have like sometimes members of a business community who are like, their membership, business owners that are going to be near a station are like, oh, this will be good for business, you know, because they're thinking a little bit more like that. But generally, it's way quieter. Whereas the NIMBYs have protests every fucking weekend. They've got their signs with their batshit crazy like statements. You know, like this is one chick you see all the time, and it says like 900,000 tons of carbon dioxide emitted. I assume that's like the concrete for like the viaducting, and it's like, what she wants is a tunneled REM. There's more fucking carbon dioxide. Tunneling the REM, the whole fucking tunnel is lined with concrete. Like it's, you know, you should, you just want to walk up and be like, you stupid lady, you know, like it's just horseshit. But the journalist goes along and is like, well, they said this, and then what did the other side say? The other side's like, dude in suit, local business association likes thing that's good for business, you know? It's a whole, yeah, anyway. That's, the journalists in the media, like to me, it's like, if you're ever aware of, like if you're ever informed about a topic and you read the newspaper, it's always a little nightmarish to be like, oh, God, what else is like this, you know, in the fields that I'm not familiar with? You know, it's like they got the fucking guy's name wrong. You know, like it's always interesting when you're like on the inside of an issue and you read about it and you just kind of start to extrapolate that and you're like, God, how much stuff are they saying that's just terrible? Anyway, I got more on the press later on. I should probably have just saved it till then. So, mistakes made. Now, what the Caisse did wrong is announce the specifics of the REM de l'Est prior to having the Western REM operational in any way. A lot of the things that they could have said, like, we're looking into it, you know, we're planning. They wanted to keep their staff busy with something to chew on, to keep that kind of production line going. That was a plan for their business model. But it didn't allow the good news press to come through. So you would have had, and you will have, hopefully at the end of the year, people being like, man, this is great. People down at the Lachine Canal being like, it doesn't make any noise. You know, like the stuff that like, where you kind of get the cost-benefit ratio gets readjusted based on people's personal experience. Now, if you live or travel to Vancouver, you know that the SkyTrain is great, you know, super useful. Like, when you land at Vancouver Airport, you're like, oh, it's really nice to be able to take rapid transit into town, you know, like this doesn't make a lot of noise and whatever. With the REM, you have, with Montreal, we just don't even have this shit on the eastern side of the continent. You know, if Reese is watching, I'm sure he could correct me. I I can't think of an automated rail line that's in a place that Montrealers are often going to. So it allowed people to just envision their worst fear of what the rim will be like, you know? So all the articles are like, they're always showing pictures of like the rim that's going down the highway, that's the tallest viaduct, you know? They're kind of thinking of like Chicago L train style noise and shadows cast and stuff. If they had waited until the rim, the first phase of the rim was open and the good press came in, and then kind of talked about what the rim list will be, probably would have gotten a few points in the kind of positive column, I think, overall. So I think that was probably a mistake. But it was a mistake made because they almost certainly didn't realize what they were about to walk into, you know? They had just done a thing. I've met with a lot of people at the Caisse while doing this stuff and talked to them plenty of times. The first time I met them, they just looked like a bunch of people. They're Montrealers, you know, who were like, oh, we're building a cool thing for our town. Like, so proud to be involved in this thing. Like, I don't think they realized going into this kind of second phase what the growing opposition was going to do to them and how it was going to get kind of conspiratorial, just throw shit, like anything that works. Like, I don't think that they knew what was in store for them, and they got handed a shit sandwich, you know? Like, the people, the NIMBYs are, I mean, there's a reason that they're the like worst enemy of my fucking generation. They are super formidable. They're crazy. They're so motivated to keep their property values high and to keep their neighborhood the way they like it. They're just so much more effective than some good buzz amongst people who are like, oh, transit, I like transit. You know, and they get themselves, there's like 100 of them will just wreck the place, you know, and they have. So I don't think that they realized when they were going into announcing the REM list, I think they were probably thinking in a kind of more internal way, oh, we should let the government know we have made progress. We should let the public know what we're working on. More information is better, you know, that sort of thing, rather than like seeing it as like what's coming down the pipeline as a massive amount of opposition and fear-mongering, and a lot of that will be built on the unknown. Like, oh, you know, we don't know what it's going to sound like. We don't know what it's going to look like, you know? All right. And yeah, it is the hard thing. If you've ever been involved in something that's been reported on that you know inside is good, so if you're like involved in a thing that gets, say, throwing like a lot of negative attention and intentions are placed on the members of it. So it's like, this guy sucks, you know, and you're like, I know that person. They're really nice. They really care. You know, maybe they didn't come across well in an interview or something, but you know who they are and you know that they want a good thing. You'll understand what it's like to kind of like to watch something getting kind of like trawled through the press and be like, man, that sucks. And I think that's what's happened with the Caisse. So this gets on to one of the points that was brought up here. Why this is deeply sad. As I noticed in the announcement that Francois Legault was hinting at stuff in Laval and hinting at kind of like stuff to the northeast of Montreal, northeast, north, depends on your Montreal compass. And what's fucking brutal there is that they've cancelled the project. They've like basically cancelled the REM list, being like, because the Caisse is basically a opt-in, opt-out model, right? So the Caisse is like, here it is. We're not going to like force this upon you. Do you want it or not? And the government said no. And furthermore, we're going to do the things that were in your kind of catchment basin of projects for what you would do instead of the REM list. So they're cutting off. They're basically sending a message to the Caisse. No more. Like, that's it. That's the end of you doing transit in Montreal. And that's terrible because if you've watched the videos, the Caisse were trying to spin up a model for doing this sort of thing, you know? Like, they're doing the reps in Montreal, a couple of lines, getting the kind of thing moving, and then they would then they would head to Ottawa and be like, oh, we can solve your problem. We've got the team, we've got the know-how, we did it in Montreal, look at the people like it, you know, would you like it? Go to Toronto, go to the States. They tried to go to New Zealand, you know, and what we're doing is kind of like strangling them in their infancy, you know. It's a terrible metaphor. Yeah, kill children. We're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like, we're murdering the whole grander scheme, you know, to loop in this kind of entity to building public infrastructure. And now let's just go back to what it was before. We should work with the ARTM, the STM, the City of Montreal, and Transport Quebec. And this kind of clusterfuck of political insiders that has failed to get much transit built for the entire existence of Montreal, bar the metro in the 60s. We're going to just give the keys back to them. It's just like the best we can hope for, I guess, is they're inspired by the REM, but based on like the proposals they're talking about, like just the fact that they're like, oh, we're not gonna go into downtown. It's like, okay, you guys fucking idiots. Like, we don't want to ride the Green Line the whole way to Pointe-aux-Trembles. You know, that's going to take fucking ages, and it's going to eat up the entire budget for building transit in Montreal for the next like 30 years. What we wanted, what was awesome about the REM, is it ate so little of the federal and provincial budget, is that the ARTM and the STM could have gone and turned one of the EXO lines into a REM. It's like what about this and this? Instead of fighting the case, they could have just been like, okay, well, you know, we'll take it from here. We'll do the Saint Jerome line, set it up as a REM, get like some sort of like transportation charge, attached development charge, solve the housing crisis a bit, while also building a transit line. Instead of just like complementing the project and adding to it, they were like, fight the project, and they fucking won. They managed to give the NIMBYs and the people who were against the REM enough fuel to get the government to capitulate. So it's sad. And the sadder thing is the vision. I don't know. I hope that they can recover. I hope that there's some way of pulling out of this, but like it's so disappointing. The journalists, I had this point, yeah, suck my dick, La Presse. Like, you guys are so biased every fucking week. Brr, brr, the same fucking shit. I don't know, like, what, it's just the stuff that you're like, this is why people have a problem with the media. Like, they're not neutral, you know? They're just so one-sided. Their reporting was just this battering ram. And it's like, thank you very much, journalists. Good job. You defended the status quo. What the fuck? You know, like, it's like the government and government employees get what they want, and you were fucking defending them? What the fuck? You know? And we'll be like, well, our job is to criticize. Why didn't you fucking criticize the government? It's just terrible. I really, really was unbelievable. Watching it was like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? You know? It was so biased. There are other outlets that were able to at least kind of like, ugh. But La Presse, the sense I got was that they're getting leaked to by people in the, like, they've been around a long time and they have a big network of contacts. I get the sense that they got co-opted by the unions and government workers and just kind of spent so much time hearing their thing that they didn't actually get to the kind of like bigger picture. Hey, you know, this isn't that crazy. Yeah, pretty rational choices made. Yeah, anyway, again, like, they just have this network, right? They've got the old fucking university professors and professionals that have built their career around like public consultation, above all, you know, got in their fucking ear, and that's what we got. So La Presse can fucking suck it. I can't believe what a fucking biased piece of reporting it was. Every fucking column, every fucking journalist, what a bunch of fucking pussies. Thanks for helping the government out. Jesus Christ. Election year. This is also the election year, and it's the second thing that the CAQ has fucked us on. They have like reneged on their pro-rep thing, which is horrible for me. And I mean, fundamentally, a lot of this stuff spawns from this kind of like riding-based decision-making and the incredible complexity of our electoral system. You can't just go 70% of Montrealers are in favor of a REM. Guess we should build a REM. You have to go like, whoa, how do Montrealers feel here and here and here? What about the specific geographic importance of voters and how they'll be able to sway their neighbors means that the ridings might be flipped? You know, the voters in Montreal North, I mean, they're locked in seats, so who cares about those assholes? You know, it's just, yeah. Anyway, fundamentally, this is like round 2 of like, holy shit, this government. It's like the same government that like, it's just the attention span that people have. How shit is this government? They killed like more people per capita during COVID than any other province in Canada. You know, the like reporting on the like nursing homes and grandma in her diapers dying of COVID, just the shit that has gone down over the last couple of years, and they're somehow on track to get reelected. Same thing on Ontario. I'm just like, how is this happening? You know, I mean, I hate this government immensely, right? Like now, this is definitely a thing, and like I would say to anyone living in the 2 ridings at the end of the island, you just got fucked. Like if you're 50 years old now, you know, you're an important voter. You were, by the time you're 60, getting to the point where maybe driving would be a little hard, 60, 70, you start to kind of lose your license, and you start to be like, oh, it'd be good to have, you know, this public transit to be able to whisk myself around town. You won't get it now. Like, you were looking at waiting until you're 60. Now you're looking at like 70, and it's not even, it's like halfway there, and it's a tram, and then you have to transfer to the Green Line. Like, you just got screwed. The government will pretend like, oh, we're just going to fix all the problems. It's going to be sunshine and rainbows. You're going to get everything you want. You're getting fucked. So I don't know. Like, I send that message to most people. It's going to be this patchwork of shit if it gets built, and it's probably just going to be like half the patchwork that gets built, just kind of chip away again. Not a kind of big rethink of fucking transit. Yeah, the project is cancelled. Like, it's cancelled. This isn't like, oh, we're taking it over. It's like, we're going to be inspired by it to whatever. They might be able to purchase architectural plans, say, from the Caisse, but they can't, like, and they'll work with the same engineering firms and stuff, but they can't just, it's not their IP, it's not their institutional knowledge. They can't just lift and shift it and be like, now it's on us and we're just gonna, whatever. Like, that's nonsense. So yeah. I assume that the reason that this is rolling out now is because they don't want to, in election year, get burdened with like, oh, we're responsible for cancelling this. Like the CAC has cancelled the REM. That's we're not getting that. Like, we're going to get the status quo, which means it's been cancelled. Like, we're back to where we were. It's not like the government's like, you know, 2 years into the engineering studies to, you know, build their plan. Like, if they're talking about like not even an automated light rail solution, what the fuck is that? Like a continuation of a project, you know? Okay. Yeah. Anyways. So yeah, they're basically decapitating the project, like cutting the head off the body, and then being like, we'll just put a new head on. Stupid. There's a lot of paper over here. I should probably have a look at it. Okay. I understand downtown being affected, but since it's a bit more cramped, or like Chinatown, but the segment of René Lévesque is a joke. I can't think of anyone actually negatively affected there. Yeah, I mean, I can, like Chinatown is, the Chinatown Station, there's a fucking lot, if you're familiar with the area. That's where the station was going. No demolition. They're like, oh, the gates will be blocked from one side. Okay. The gates will be blocked from one side. It's just like, fuck. This is why we can't have nice things. There's a price to progress. You can't just have everything, you know? Some people, I got this in the comments, were like, well, they should get a Chinese architect to design the station. It's like, you fucking morons, that fucking style of architecture is like Disneyland Chinese. It was manufactured. That's not fucking Chinese architecture. That's like white people being brought on by Chinese business owners to make something that felt safe. So they're like, oh, it should be like a fucking, like a rice hat, like a racist fucking, like rice farmer hat, and they come out of the hat, you know, and they're given like some chopsticks. Like, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, a Chinese architect, if given the task of designing a station, will make something that probably looks like the station. Like, it's not, it's so stupid. Like, we don't even realize that they're asking an architect to make something that's not cool. It's not cool to make like faux Han Dynasty pagoda shit. That's not what Chinese architects make. They're a modern society that's part of a global architecture culture. It's not going to look like that, you know? And it's such anyway, I don't think I need to explain it anymore. There's a really good Vox video on that. I think Ute might have one on that too. He definitely has one on Chinatown Divided. But like, yeah, it has a classic one, you know, just like the public's knowledge of the thing and then like telling them what to do. Yeah, and it doesn't demolish anything. And what's kind of cool, I think actually with the Chinatown thing is Chinatown doesn't have a station. Like it has 2 stations either side that are given the road name. What the REM could have done is, and they look like they probably were going to, is call that station Chinatown Station. And it would have been great to actually recognize the fucking neighborhood and be like, this is Chinatown, it's this station. When I first moved to Montreal, people would be like, you know, Chinatown, and you don't know where it is because for a lot of people, especially when you first arrive in a city and you are like using the metro, you look around the stations to see where things are. It's not immediately obvious that Chinatown's there. Like you find Chinatown by walking around and eventually you're like, oh, there's the fake pagoda thing. Cool, this must be Chinatown. So the REM was, if anything, I think, going to be good for Chinatown. It was going to finally be like, this is Chinatown. Here's the station. It's called Chinatown. Go to the REM station, Chinatown. Now you're in Chinatown. And permanently cement it as a fucking cultural district, you know? Imagine it would have been very good for the business owners as well. I don't even know who was fucking opposing it, you know? Like, it's like, is it people who are ignorant or people who like live nearby and are just kind of like being like, oh, I can latch onto this identity politics issue and that will be a way I'll oppose the REM? I don't know. People, I fully agree with you, and it is also harder to organize people who agree with it because why invest a lot of time and money for a thing that is already happening? Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the sense I think a lot of people got there in support of the REM are like, oh, this thing's good, like all good, it's happening, like cases on it. I mean, that's why I started making videos. I realized at a certain point, like, they need help. Like, this needs to be explained to people better because it might not happen. This is illustrative of why Yimbys need to just take no prisoners with our media appearances. Yeah, like, by the way, you're watching this, you're as annoyed as me. There's a Yimby group that spun up. It's great. Like, the people involved in it are fucking awesome. It's on Discord. It's on Facebook. It's called More Montreal. So look up More Montreal. There's a French name, but I can't remember the way to say it. It's Construise Montreal. It's like let's construire Montreal. So it's like the like allons-y. It's like that contraction Montreal. So let's build Montreal. Anyway, check that out. I think it's in the fucking link below, if I remember correctly. Anyways, so jump on there and like, you know, like it is like, it's like, I really do think this is a this far and no fucking further moment. Like, I'm sick of this. It is happening across things. It is happening in housing and it's happening in transit. It is fucking ridiculous. Like, let's swing this thing back to a reasonable place where you don't have to spend your entire life worrying about housing security and driving a car. Like, I'm sick of living like this. And it is these fucking NIMBYs. Maybe start going after NIMBYs as an active menace to society and paint them as such. Being NIMBY should be like being pro-segregation, a position you can only take in private. Yeah, none of them think they're NIMBYs though. Like, that's a key thing to remember. The NIMBYs think that they're the heroes of their narrative. They think that they're opposing like big government, and in the Caisse's case, they're opposing some like giant corporation that's just privatizing infrastructure. They don't. It's confirmation bias, right? You go, I don't like this viaduct. You don't then go like, because I'm selfish. You go, because neighborhood character. Oh, it's privatizing infrastructure. They come up with whatever tailored thing they need to hear. You would see it at the fucking protests. It'd be like a sign where there's like one person with a sign and another person with a sign. Like, one person's like, public transit's bullshit, and another person's got a sign that's like, we need to cut carbon emissions and the REM's going to emit carbon, you know? And you're like, these guys should be fighting with each other, but somehow they've like solidified their friendship over this thing. And you're like, yeah, it's because they're like, oh, well, okay, I might not quite agree with you, but like, hey, like, we all hate this thing, you know? Anyway, okay. 20 years from now, we'll be like, oh, this is so great. I wish they had built more. Why didn't they? Yep, exactly. You see it all the time with these sorts of developments. You have like if you, like I think most of my audience are kind of like the sort of people who like click through Wikipedia articles, from time to time, and you'll read almost all the lines in the metro have these kind of, the proposed extension, maybe like the white line proposal, or like the green line proposal, or like just the history of the blue line. And you can see, like, you almost always, in retrospect, go, shame they didn't do that. Shame they couldn't figure out a way to make it work, And this is going to be another one of those. Are we going to have are we going to have this kind of like reflection of like, man, keeps kind of not getting built when we let the status quo prevail reflection, and we won't have enough time for it. I mean, you have a thing with all these NIMBYs. So many of them are like 60, 70 years old. They're old as fuck. Like, like the average age of that crowd is old as fuck. And there's a little bit of a like, why are you opposing this? You'll be fucking dead. You'll be in a nursing home, or you won't even be alive when this thing gets built. Why are you doing this? Anyway. About you. Oh, it's Yute. Hi, Yute. Yute's a very nice person. He would never have a ranty rant like this on his channel. just like drinking. You sons of a bitches. I'll kill you. Okay, what does a nice urbanist say? I know a lot of NIMBYs around Vancouver, and from what I can tell, there is very much a social activity for them too. Absolutely. And I did like the YIMBY Montreal group when we, like the first meeting, at the end of the meeting, I was like, let's have a hangout. And we had a hangout, which is, by the way, that was super fun. The people that we all know, and we'll organize another one soon. And it's because it's the camaraderie, it's the shared fight, there's a lot of joy to like fighting for a cause together, and not feeling alone, especially when you hold a view that's as kind of odd as like, I kind of want the government to get out of the way of property developers so that housing can be built for low-income people. It's not a comfortable traditional position to hold in that kind of left-right political spectrum. So it's really nice to be able to go along to a thing where you're with a bunch of people who are like, developers are my best friend, but they're better than sleeping in a car, and it makes you feel less crazy. So yeah, for sure, the NIMBY groups, it's like it's a social network for them, and that's something that the YIMBY groups, the people who support development, should recognize, like we gotta be buddies, we gotta feel like we're part of something, encourage each other, support each other, not kind of like the fucking greenhouse gas person and the fuck public transit person. They look past some of their differences to unite to oppose a development or a piece of transit. And the YIMBY people, we need to look past our political differences to get housing built, to get transit built. We may not always agree on everything, but this is fucking terrible, Like, how many more years of this, This whole fucking life has been just like, whoa, every fucking transit project's just like pulling fucking teeth, Peeved says, honestly, going to Europe for the first time this month was eye-opening for me. It's ridiculous how crap our infrastructure is here by comparison. Like, sure, the metro is good, but it's tiny. Yeah, I mean, it's like Europe inherited its advantages, Like, I'm not a big fan of being like, oh, the Europeans are just geniuses, They didn't have cars when they built most of their cities. They haven't had to deal with massive population growth during an era where people drove cars. But yeah, for sure, it's like, it's good for like inspiration, being like, oh, it's like important to say to people, we can build medium density. We can be like, okay, all the future stuff we build should be like this because this is awesome. I like walking around in a little neighborhood shop and this is nice. Oh, well, we're connecting the dots. It has something to do with the form of the housing. Like, yeah, and then once you build medium density, there's the thing, like, if all of the island of Montreal was like high density skyscrapers, the rim could be tunneled because it would financially make sense. The reason it's not tunneled and viaducted is because we're going through sprawl, So it has to be, it's not cost effective to tunnel it. But yeah, you increase the density enough, maybe it would work. So yeah, if east of Montreal moves up the density, it all kind of like flows. It's all kind of connected, What was cool with the RAM was they were willing to place a bet on the densification occurring once they put the RAM in. And not a lot of governments have that sort of foresight, but that's basically how it was going to pay for itself. And it would have happened, Montreal Est has got a lot of low density and a lot of old industrial land that's probably not going to be, that's being remediated. Some of it will be remediated to commercial grade, but some of it will be remediated like the Lachine Canal to residential grade. And those residences and that commercial would have been good for ridership, the bet that they were making. In a lot of ways, for the Caisse, they might be like breathing a sigh of relief, being like, well, at least we don't have to like nervously watch, how the development goes ahead. Red and Rocky. So would it then be fair to say that they are an antisocial social club? Yeah, kind of. I mean, a lot of social clubs are. I'm sure that do I want to go there? Probably not. There's like skinheads and racists and all these groups that we're like, oh, they suck. Like the truckers, I mean, did you see the camaraderie? There's a missed kind of layer of a lot of this stuff. People do this, you saw the trucker protest, people they're just having a party, they're just having a good time, this isn't serious. It's like, if you've spent any time going along to protests over the years, there is always a large number of people that are just there for the social aspect, they're just having a good time, Like the bongo drum, pot smoking hippie sort. I was at a protest, I was at a protest the other day for, against the war in Ukraine. And, I was there because I was like, this is fucking terrible. I'm going to go down and I'm going to do something. I'm going to be annoyed at this thing. And we're there, and there were a group of us, and there's this, couple of people who I don't really know. They're, friends of friends. And we're there for, half an hour. And then I heard them oh boy. Is it working? Yes, probably is. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed the commercial break. So, where were we? In the middle of a rant. I don't know why the camera decided to die on me just then. I don't think I've been going for hours, and it's lasted this long before, but whatever. So, I'm just like making sure it comes back on. Luckily, I caught that fairly early. I don't know if you missed much, but basically, where are we at? Skipping the downtown meant having a RAM last end at the metro's entrance, in which case it's not ideal, but it's something. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they're hinting at, you know? But it's like, okay, great. So it's just like, okay, so fundamentally, just that alone, you're like, totally different project, you know? So it's going to be like, because you'd be like, okay, if you don't have the connection to downtown, what should it be? And it's like, well, probably wouldn't want to make it a automated viaducted like system. You're not going to get the amount of ridership. So the tunneled sections that they have to have to connect to the blue line wouldn't pay for themselves in the like Caisse's model. I mean, it's just really, I just wish the government had figured out a way to pay off the system. Be like, okay, fine, you don't want to pay for the tunnels because the tunnels don't make financial sense. Well, we'll just throw $10 billion at you to make that happen, you know? But I assume that the Caisse just kind of refused to do it because it was so ridiculously expensive, and maybe the government didn't believe it was that expensive. I don't know. I don't know what happened on the inside, you know? Like, who knows what the negotiations were. We'll probably find out, but in decades. Once people leave their jobs and retire and can just say like what they think about things. Doesn't make sense to have two disconnected REM lines. Wouldn't that involve creating another maintenance and for storage facility? Yes, there's that. I never even thought of that. That's a really good point though. It was so depressing to see La Presse, which is probably my favorite local paper, otherwise just constantly moan about the REM. Super disappointing. Yep, I know, it's also mine. They're generally pretty reasonable and independent, so that sucked ass. You know, not strong on transit, I guess. I'm so glad someone can perfectly summarize how I'm feeling about this all today. I'm glad that that feels that way, and when you were talking about the camaraderie and all that shit, like part of the reason I wanted to do this, I was going to just like carefully script a video and make sure I say exactly what I want to say, but I felt like other people would probably appreciate knowing that they're not alone and being like bummed out, like it's not cool, like what has happened? Sucks. Okay, let's see where we're at here. I bitched about the CAC, which I can do endlessly. The play. Yeah, okay. So here's the where to from here for this stuff. Like this is pretty unlikely to, you know, recover. But because this is, like if people in the ridings can the NIMBYs made the racket. And the YIMBYs haven't been heard yet, really, as we've talked about. So there is conceivably, given this is an election year, outrage now, you know? People being like, this is fucking ridiculous, you know? I care about climate change. Maybe, yeah, I also like views, but you just delayed the thing that we could really do for climate change in my neighborhood by 10 years, say. I'm annoyed and I will vote based on my frustrations and I will motivate my neighbors. Like it's kind of balls in our court, and I don't want to do the like, write a letter to your politician. It's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is like change people's minds in your community, get outraged, jump on the like YIMBY groups. Maybe we can organize a fucking protest, you know? I don't want to be the like organizer of that thing. Like I think it's important for French-speaking Montrealers, like my audience obviously is Anglophone and bilingual, but it has to be like people in these neighborhoods, like people in Montreal North need to be like, Liberal Party, as a condition of me voting for you, you have to put this back on the table, like that sort of thing, right? And it is, like if I was a liberal, the Liberal Party right now should jump on this as the CAC have wasted people's time, you know, like they've wasted money, they've like wasted your pension funds time, like the returns won't be as good for retirees. People in Laval, it's like, they were going to get, like the Caisse was going to be proposing the South Shore options and the Laval options. Now they're not. Now it's going to be the incompetent. Now it's nothing. There's nothing, like, it's just back to what it was like 10 years ago. Great. You know, I think that one of the parties, the Parti Québécois, the Liberals, Quebec Solidaire could, but they don't seem to be super friendly to the model because they've got a pretty, like, antiquated left-right political way of thinking, but they might. Someone of all the parties should be able to, like, jump on saving the REM, you know, as a campaign platform, and they should from that be able to get votes in other places, because across Montreal is generally, according to the polls, are in favour of the REM, you know, and a lot of people, especially transit enthusiasts, really love transit, you know, and climate change people are really passionate about climate change. So I think they can pick up votes in ridings that aren't going to benefit from any of the planned REM just because it's like, oh, I care about this issue and I want it to occur even in other ridings, right? So that's the only real, like, I hope that one of the parties campaigns on yes in my backyard, and yeah, we're going to save the REM from the fucking CAC, you know? You still have the municipal government, but definitely the provincial government is the biggest problem here, because all of this stuff in the end can be forced upon the city by the provincial government, and I think that a party coming in next year could be like, we're going to create some compromised thing where the city's more at the table. We're going to kick in some more money for its integration. I think that they probably could make it work. So that's the kind of last gasp chance. And I assume that they announced all this stuff now because they don't want to go into the election being like, we fucked up the REM. And enough people will be like, well, they haven't cancelled the REM, they're just redeveloping it. They've cancelled the REM. They've cancelled the REM. Like, that's bullshit. That's spin. Like, what do you call it when you terminate the existing plan and redo it from scratch? Like, we see it all the time on the different failed projects that have, you know, that are supposed to have happened over the years. Like, all of these projects crisscross the same territory, but we don't say like, oh, this is the REM didn't come in as like, this is the Green Line extension, you know, it was a different project. And so the new thing that gets pitched will be a new project. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, that's the solution of anything. As with all things, if people are annoyed enough, if people vote the CAC out and vote for a party that said that they won't do this and that they will, you know, go back, put it back in their hands and get the REM built because it's the fastest way to achieve climate goals or whatever, then this could change, and it could change this year, and it's in enough time. Like the REM. The western side of the REM, that's absorbing all the Caisse's time. All of the stuff that they have planned will still be relevant in December, you know, and that's when they'll be like, okay, we're ready to go on this. So if the government came back in December with a new government and approached them again, it could actually happen. But yeah, the polls aren't looking good for that. I guess we'll see, like, how this goes down. I don't know. I'm mad as hell. Like, some of you might be too. And that we might not be as, like, smaller number as we think, you know? I bet they come back with a tram. Yeah, probably. I bet they'll come back with like a tram for this bit, an extended Green Line, and a few other random pieces of shit that are like just piecemeal transit, not a big vision. The same thing that they've been doing, you know? Like that's what we do, you know? We don't do big things because of this shit. Like we live in this kind of like piecemeal. We live in a society that's like really, really big on climate change and really, really small on solutions. Just like, we're going to put a bus lane in, you know, like, fucking hell. The only person not smiling at the press conference was Chantal Rouleau, minister responsible for keeping the CAC in office in Pointe-aux-Trembles. Yeah, I know. So that, yeah, she went to bat for it. And I mean, you know, this thing is like these politicians are still, like at that press conference, it's like you hear people like clapping, like, you're like, fuck you. Who's fucking clapping? Who's fucking clapping for this? We're cancelling transit project. But we've spun. It's this crowd journalists. Have they got they've placed people in the crowd to like get this kind of thumbs up from or sense of like approval of this, and they're smiling and stuff, and you're like, you psychopaths. Like, anyway, Zach says, hands off my plans. Yeah, like this is a sad thing for a lot of people. For people working on the REM, the people, there's a lot of people who are new Montrealers, they came to town to work on it, but most of the people who are working on the REM are Montrealers, the construction workers, the architecture firms and the engineers like S&C and stuff. This is a sad day for a lot of people in Montreal, being like so proud of something and then having it whipped out like this and being kind of the demonizing that's occurred over the last few years for people who are aware of what's actually going on in the project. The pride in like being part of building a transit network, being able to design, as most people watching this, like I love the Montreal Metro. It's a masterpiece architecturally. And I was so excited when the REM de l'Est plans came out and you saw that they'd like reworked the viaducting. You just know that if you're an architect and you're given this assignment in your hometown, they would have cared. It's like this is going to be the thing that people actually see. There's a lot of buildings that get built for rich people and art galleries and stuff. And like most people, it's like you walk past and you're like, looks nice. This was going to be something that millions of people, almost everyone in Montreal would experience. And many people like multiple times, the various stations on the REM de l'Est. And they were really going all out to try to, maximize that like legacy, and you would have gotten more out of the architecture firms and the engineers and people than almost anything else, because they just know that this is why I got into this, and yeah, it sucks. Like being like, no, that won't happen. It'll be like, oh, maybe you get a BRT station design. Woo! Anyway, Constructions Montreal. Yeah, that's it. It's funny. I was like, I don't. It's like that's the next level of French for me. But like, I'm like working on that a little bit right at the moment. I don't know what you want to call it. The words that are like express what are like three words in English, like I will something or whatever in one. I don't know the names of the technical terms for it, but that's one of them. I was like, really? You can say all that in 2 words? Great job, French. Normally, like it's a nice feature of the language. I saw an article earlier and just looked it up to find it again. They complained that it was detrimental to the integrity of the living and built environment, aka vague bullshit. Yeah, I mean, this was like a huge problem with the opposition. They were like, it should be something else. And it's like, what? And they'd be like, when you could kind of tease out of them their idea, you'd be like, well, would you like me to be in opposition to your stupid idea? Because I have, there's plenty of things I want to say about light rail or whatever they were proposing. And they're like, being unable to be like, look, there's fucking everything's a compromise. It's not all awesome, At the very least, it costs a lot of money. It's just, yeah. Anyway, it's just like fundamentally an issue with a lot of the opposition to it was just like vague, like, oh, this isn't good for the environment in some way, it's kind of arbitrary, and just like not being able to like make a fucking common sense decision. And the politicians, this is why, supposedly, we elect these enlightened representatives from amongst us to go and make decisions for us. And they're just proving, like, as time goes by, the class of politicians we're getting is just getting fucking worse and worse. It's just like a really inefficient translation of like enough angry phone calls and like who's got to win elections for them. The lack of leadership in this country is just astounding, so frustrating. When the opposition started to mount, the Caisse trotted out this slightly arrogant French from France dude in the media to assure concerns which, as we all know, people in Quebec absolutely love. Assume that's the CEO of CDPQ Infra. Yeah, and I mean, like, it is like a hard thing, right? Like, they're having to be like professional. They can't like say what I'm saying. They can't be like, opposition are a pack of fucking assholes. Like these guys, like this guy's got fucking Alzheimer's and he's allowed to vote, whatever. They can't do that. They have to be like very kind of like professional in their opposition to things. And the NIMBYs, they were like, ragtag, blah, 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 sort of a crowd. So we have a problem for the Yimbys, or the people who support this project, wherever like grassroots. There's just not like, we haven't really gotten ourselves together in time to kind of like get those messages out there. So I guess maybe we can catch the next one. Maybe we can turn this around, think positively. But yeah, that is a big issue. They need grassroots Francophone stuff. I talked to them about this a while ago. And it is just like, I don't know why for some reason I'm here doing this shit in English. My French is not good enough I would be like the French dude from the Caisse. It'd be like, oh, now there's another foreigner telling us what we should do. There needs to be like an organic Francophone representative to kind of like lay out the like plain language realities here. You know, like it's something that needs to happen, I think, to reach the vast majority of people in this province who obviously are like native Francophones, and even if they understand English, I'm always going to be a foreigner, you know, to some degree. So yeah, anyway, but that person, if they're watching, like get fucking making videos, I'll help, send me a message. Respect Chinatown's heritage through a holistic integration from a design and planning perspective. It emphasizes the significance of prioritizing an underground track. They didn't even want to see it. Yeah, it's just like, if you bury it, it could be like a not Orientalist fucking Disneyland structure because you can't see it, right? I actually thought, like, I was looking at the designs that they have, and like they're pretty rough. Like they don't want to show. They don't want to show all the detail. They haven't gotten to that kind of level. But you could see that there was like, the Chinatown Station was definitely different. And I think, to me, it looked a little bit like they were inspired by like a hand fan design, which is a nice way of being like, oh, okay, like, yeah, hand fans, that kind of design, quite common in Asian countries, but not like in your face, like the current, like pagoda stuff, you know. It's like, that pagoda shit is kind of like the ski village at the bottom of Mount Tremblant. You know, it's just like, okay, I haven't seen this anywhere outside of North America. You know, video just died. It's been fixed. Hopefully, by the time I get to here, yes, should be. People are mad. We now have to pay the CDPQ back for all the work they did, and their partners did those last 3 or 4 years. I don't think they do on this phase. There is like the contract for the REM, the first phase of a REM had in it like a cancellation cost, you know, that sort of thing to lock them in, which is part of what the opposition complained about. They're like, the contract that's signed makes us, puts us on the hook for cancelling the project. And you're like, this is all part of why this model is good. Because you are locked in. The government can't cancel it without it costing a bunch of money. Whereas when they like cancel without it costing a bunch more money. So when they go to cancel it, they're like, oh, but then there's the pain of us having to fork out $2 billion or whatever to cover all the waste. And then that would go in the public, and the public would be like, oh, you're paying out $3 billion for nothing? Just finish the fucking thing, you know? So that's actually a feature of a contract, but I don't think that with the REM list that they had anything on the hook. I think what's probably going to happen is the government will try to purchase something from the CDPQ, so it's not like going down as the government made them lose money. So they'll probably try to get like the studies and architectural designs and any work that's been done, and kind of like maybe pay to transfer some staff over. They'll probably, like, if they're smart, try to do what they can to rescue the project. But as I said, like, if you go to LinkedIn and search like CDPQ infra, and you'll see like there's like 80 staff there, and it's just on LinkedIn. Those people, the government doesn't own them. They don't get to just like take them, like, oh, we'll take them now. You know, they can't really buy the project off the Caisse. You know, there's just too much that's integrated in. You know, it's to the actual entity that is CDPQ Info, who I assume, hopefully, if they're still going after this with things, we'll be bidding on other shit. You know, so we don't want them to be robbed of all their institutional memory to be given to the government, who might build a transit line one day. You were saying you were at the Ukraine protest. I was at the Ukraine protest when I I don't know if I want to repeat the story in case it did come through. Basically, I was at the protest and I overheard a friend being like, what's going on with Ukraine? And that's the kind of social element. There's always people like that who are nice people at a protest, in a movement, in the NIMBY thing. They're playing music, they're dancing around, they're having scones. There's just a social element to these movements that are nice, and it's something that the YIMBY crowd need to replicate. You know, we need to have a camaraderie of like fighting for our cities being transit oriented and housing being affordable. You know, that's how this stuff works. Protest movements, that is. 10-year delay, that's optimistic. Yeah, I mean, this was going to be built around 2030. I think it'd already been delayed a year at least because of the Environmental Review Board stuff. And I mean, a 10-year delay of what? It'll be like, well, I mean, they could build light rail along the route from Henri Bougland to Pointe-aux-Trembles in that time, probably. But it's like, yeah, but it wouldn't be as good. Like, that's not a very good solution. That's got to transfer to, you know, you're like, that's the stuff where you're like, well, why not just have a bus? Like, because it's not going to be that much faster. It might be a bit more comfortable. It's like, okay, great. Like if the government comes along, they're like, we're looking at building light rail for the same length, I'll support it. And this is the thing that the NIMBYs won't do. And this is why they're such dicks. Like, I support transit. This was a good option. A light rail line, it's not as good, but I'll still support it because it's something. But the people who oppose the REM, most of them, I just don't. I think that they were just throwing, a lot of them were just throwing like whatever would work, you know? And it's like, I mean, like that, when they moved the REM onto Soligny and the opposition sprung up and it's like a freight rail line, this is that stretch. I'm like, okay, so do you guys really think that you'll be in support of those fucking crossings coming down every like 5 minutes, ding, 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 you know, to let the light rail solution through that you guys want? You know, maybe they'll silence it or come up with some other like security system, but it's just like, I don't really think they even knew what they were asking for. I think they're just hoping that like when it gets cancelled, the solution that ends up getting implemented just doesn't go down their road, you know, to be cynical. I don't even live in Montreal or Quebec, and I am angry about this. Yeah, well, you know, hopefully the Caisse head elsewhere with this model, you know, and you know, can go like, well, we built the REM in Montreal this phase, what is it, 67 kilometers, and it's working great. So, you know, you can point to that and support it. Etienne, I immediately thought of you when I read the news. My hope is that Valérie Plante will push for slight modifications and rebranding. I don't think that's going to happen with what happened today. I wonder if Project Montreal realized that they got screwed and they're not going to get to have this. Like Montreal mayoral parties, like Project Montreal, they don't usually survive very long. I don't think they're going to get a legacy of building transit because they're kind of timed badly, you know? You get like the REM opening, but I think a lot of people will see that as a Denis Cordier legacy. Yeah, and this is not going to happen in time for Valérie Plante to get her statue or her equivalent of, you know, Parc Jean Drapeau. Philippe, Blue Line 2.0. Yeah, probably. I mean, the Green Line extension will be, you know, like the Blue Line extension is costing the same amount as the whole fucking first phase of a REM. Like, that's what's wrong with those things. It's not that, like, we all like tunneled shit. It's just, what can you actually build that will get fucking built, you know? Yeah. One of the biggest failures here is that with the NIMBYs, if this doesn't happen, their life doesn't change. They're fighting super hard for nothing. And for us, it's existential almost. Yeah, like, I'm not a big like climate change person. Surprise, surprise. You know, like it seems to have animated a lot of people in my generation. I just have this. My thing is more like you guys are saying you care about climate change, and this would work for that goal, and you're not doing it because you're cowards. Like that's really, it's a real two-faced, dishonest political system going on here. And let alone that, like, for me, the reason I like Rem is because I don't really like cars, you know, and I like medium density lifestyle stuff. And I love Montreal, and I was proud of Montreal. And it just made me excited that I'd be able to say, like, Montreal's fucking built this model out and we're going to export it and you're welcome. That's Montreal. Brilliant city, of course. And being like, it's like a lot of reasons, you know, that you end up being in support of something. So I was like, yeah, it's super fucking bummed. And yeah, the NIMBYs, like, it's like, oh, but when we get, like, it feels like tripping on a little stone, you know, a little local stone. It's like, oh, shit, okay, got ahead of ourselves here. Just joined and don't know enough about the situation. It's the only political roadblock for NIMBYs pressuring plant to scrap everything above ground. No, I mean, it's mostly, if you watch the Caisse series that I did, you'll see that I could see that this was coming. I didn't expect it to happen like now. I thought it was going to happen during the election campaign or something, or maybe after it. The main opposition, the way they spun up was the first opposition was like a few grassroots campaigns, local residents in the West Island who are aware of what's going on, and the unions. I think that like the most professional opposition are the unions, which is very frustrating. Essentially, all these automated systems don't have drivers and they don't have guards and stuff. And so there's just a kind of default response from unions to not like automated systems. And so you see, like with the metro, they've got the Blue Line extension requires a new train control system, and they proudly state on the website that they're not going to automate the line, even though that's the time to do it, guys. Like, you have to put a new system, you have to put a new computer system to manage the trains in. This is the time to do it. So you're going to have a driver sitting in the blue, in the metro lines, in the Blue Line, driver's seat, hitting a kind of dead man switch, and not even braking or controlling the train at all, you know? And that's stupid. Like, they could drop the operating costs way lower. They could, like, the metro is awesome for it. It could run like 22 hours a day, you know? And we're not going to look into that because they're afraid to take on the unions. And they're afraid to take on the unions over what amounts to a fraction of the actual fucking jobs on the metro. Like, most of the employees working on the metro. Actually, I looked into this for SkyTrain. Most of the employees on the SkyTrain, they're like maintenance and operations people. Like, the drivers on the metro are not the majority of the employees by far. Like, there's more people employed in almost any other kind of sense of getting the thing going. And it's still just no compromise. It's that kind of, I think I like unions in North America. I've heard this from people that, like, European unions have a little bit more of a kind of cooperative model of operating with employers, and ours are like fight, not one step back, you know. And you could just negotiate with the STM. They could just negotiate to kind of sunset the drivers, like no new hires of drivers for metros, but we still have the other lines, like the orange line, the yellow line, and the green line. And it would just kind of be a staggered upgrading of the platform screen doors and, you know, all this stuff over time. And we can set up the programs to put these drivers that would be left into the places we need them, like bus routes. We're just fucking paying them off to retire or whatever. But it was just, they just refused to go anywhere near it, you know. And yeah, it's like, so that was and it doesn't take much. It really doesn't take much. A few blog posts from the public unions, you can find them online. They're riddled with inaccuracies. Like, you would get sued somehow if you could. In fact, I hope fucking Caisse can sue some of these unions. You know, the blog posts are false. Like, as in, like, they're like, the contract says this, and it doesn't, and you can see the contract, you know? So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's the main kind of formal opposition. And then they resourced up the informal opposition. So the NIMBYs, when you see them talking, they repeat the talking points that they've been fed from the union, from what I could tell. Then the other opposition was the, like, internal government workers, the people who were kind of protecting their turf, being like, oh my God, like, all the future, like there's transport planners at the ARTM are like, we won't be able to plan any transit because the Caisse are doing it. And of course, I'm thinking, guys, because the Caisse is funding most of this, there's still, tens of billions of provincial and federal funding that hasn't been spent because they haven't needed to spend it in Quebec. So you can go to them and be like, hey, the Broadway extension in Vancouver alone is like a $10 billion project, and you've only tied up, like, at this point, say $3 billion in a city that's twice as big. Where's our money? Like, we would like to automate one of the EXO lines, or here's our plan for some new infrastructure. Let's do the Lachine tramway. Like, that's not going to be done by the Caisse from the looks of things. But instead of doing that, they just decided to fight them on the line that they had. It's like this weird, like a toddler, like a kid seeing someone else getting something and like, yeah, it's mine. You're like, fuck. Can you do anything else that's like productive? There's so much potential to like do more. We need more. And the government, even the conservative governments in the country, like in Ontario, are throwing money at transit infrastructure right now. And it's like, there's so much cash available. Doing stuff to fight climate change is so popular. Could you just do something else? And no, instead they like kneecap them. Okay, TD. I'm fading fast here, guys, though I'm getting a little tired, so I'll probably have to finish this up fairly soon. No idea how many people are watching this. I hope that it's been good, but we'll get your questions in, or comments, or whatever. Not what really killed the REM is the other transit agency organized a hit. Yep, that's probably a big... I mean, it's just like you fuel the opposition with whatever, and it was great. They could be like, the REM's a privatization and the transit agencies aren't being respected. And that's, what I actually think. I suddenly have very strong opinions about who should be in charge of building transit. And I think it's what is it? ARTM. I think ARTM, is that right? Yes, I think ARTM should do it. That's what's fucking going on with half these fucking assholes. ARTM seems so much worse. Metrolinx. Fairly new, but yeah, not really impressed so far. It's taken them a long time to get anything done. It'll take them a long time to get this thing done. They're like founded in 2017, and all they've done is like reworking the fucking passes. They got that out the other day. They provided a list of potential projects like last year. Like, not really great. Not a lot coming out of them. It's like a chance for the government to be like, it'd be great if the Caisse were like doing a thing, and then the government was doing a thing, the transit agencies, and you were like, man, it's hard to choose. Like, if I was going to spend money on something, would I spend it on that or that? But instead it's like, here's the Caisse with this like plan, looks pretty good, like fully fleshed out, proving themselves on an existing thing. Meanwhile, the existing transit agencies are like, blue line? And you're like, yeah, you've been saying that for 40 years. Blue line. Yes, okay, we'll give you the blue line. Yay, blue line. And you're like, okay, now what? Green line? It's like, fuck. Like, look at the Caisse, look what they did, think fucking differently, guys. Did Rouleau offer any alternatives to the eastern leg after making the recommendation to scrap the entire project? I'm guessing it's back to the drawing board, or keep transferring on the metro. Yeah, they're going back to the drawing board from the looks of things. I mean, we'll get details, but I mean, the legacy that the REM's going to leave, even if this is the only thing we get, is people going like, I like the REM, that was smart, and I think it will hasten the inevitable changeover to like automated light rail, systems like that look Skytrainy. It's obviously the future. It can be built like at a price that the existing systems don't really compete with. Your operating costs are the operating costs drop down, and then you just get more. And the viaducting is pretty cheap, and it's like lessons learned like, oh, are there highways we can go down? Because like no one gives a shit about something on a highway, right? So I think that inevitably the first phase of the REM will be as great for Montreal in a broader sense than just literally the REM. Hopefully it sparks people realizing in the existing transit agencies that they can't be so like such Luddites and operate in such a kind of dated way. But yeah, I mean, I would have preferred, like I was hoping that we'd get 2 phases done, which is enough for you to really build up the Caisse's kind of institutional knowledge and the local construction industry in building this sort of thing. And then from that point on, the AOTM can build REM, and the Caisse can go off to Toronto and inspire their local transit agencies to do a better job and build stuff like this. And kind of like just to be a force for good in the world, spreading the method to people. It's not that they have to build everything, but like, couldn't we have let them build 2 things? All right. Out of everyone at the press conference, Valerie Plant had the biggest smile and was clapping the hardest. Feels bad, man. Yeah, I mean, she's just like that. Like, she's cheerful. I like Valerie Plant, like on a personal level a lot. I think she does a good job of being a figurehead for the city and being like cheerful and nice. And I'm proud to have her as a mayor. But, I don't know what the structure is inside, but I think, she's a figurehead representing a thing. I don't think that she's necessarily like really running the show, if you know what I mean. I think it's I think Project Montreal is in a team, and that this was probably the team's consensus on how to work. I mean, I feel a little sorry for her going into it because she did look like an idiot. They did make her look super fucking like powerless, and like she was having to play this like, yes, I like the REM, I've been involved in it, but then it was like, you're not really in charge of it, right? And then in this situation, it's like she's now given an opportunity to, there's like a loss of face kind of in the early phases of a REM for her. But yeah, I mean, still, it's like the Caisse presented Project Montreal and Valerie Plant the opportunity to have the pink line, and now we are not going to get the pink line. Like, I think some people said in that video, why can't we get the pink line? The reason we can't get the pink line is if you look at the route, it goes diagonally. And the only way to, at all cost effectively, do underground transit is to cut and cover. So you have to go down streets. And so the REM would have to go like whatever was dug would have to kind of like zigzag, which is crazy, right? So instead it would have to be tunneled. So the entire length would be tunnel bored, through downtown, and then also through like medium density and even like kind of low density at the end of it. It was just so fucking expensive. Like if you care about climate change and you care about transit, it would just have been a waste of money. And there's just so many better things to do. Like you'd rather have like cut and cover lines going parallel to the blue line down that side of town across to the orange line, connecting the orange line. It's hard to describe a thing, but basically, sorry. Anyway, you wouldn't want the pink line going the route that it was going. It was a very, very silly, expensive route by nature of what you would have to do to construct it. You don't want to go diagonal across city blocks. That's silly. But like you could achieve the same thing through doing cut and cover and go a longer distance. So you do that instead. Like two new cut and cover subway lines. So, okay. And she was so clumsy with the Michelle C. Auger, the most dishonest anti-REM columnist at the press. Yeah, I've read a lot of their articles. I was kind of looking for some of the stuff beforehand, but yeah, there was like a bunch of, it's like these characters where you're just like, fucking this guy. Specifically in Germany, unions usually get representation on the corporate board. Yeah. I mean, we just have we kind of have a broken system with the unions. It's not really working very well. It is like, this is the point where it's like, really, over like whatever, 100 driver jobs, we're going to like be sitting in the car instead. It's like, it's millions of people live in the city, Half the cost of the STM Metro is wages. Yep, it is. But a lot of that's maintenance. I think most of it is like maintenance and kind of support and stuff, right? And those people would still be employed. Those people will still be employed fixing the REM. Like automation, when you put in a new subway line, more union jobs occur. Do you know what I mean? Like even if the line's automated, we banged in like the black line or whatever, and it goes from Laval to Lunga, like, and it's fully automated. That's thousands. That's like 1,000 new jobs, right? Even if it's automated. And just the union's very, very short sight. Also, like I made a point in the video, when you set up a new rapid transit station, there's there's buses that connect to it. Like the length that people will take transit expands. So I would guess that the net number of jobs, even if the line's automated, drastically increases because you just have so many more people that can leave the car at home and take transit. You know, they might be bus drivers instead of metro drivers, and I'm sure like that being a metro driver for a lot of people is a real cushy job. Like, you know, driving in the snow and shit in Montreal is not awesome, but it's like, you are a public employee and I'm a public and I want transit. I don't want you to have a job. I want you to provide a service. And it's really fucked up how this is going on. I hinted at it at the end of the video, of the last video. I had the footage of like coal miners and stuff in the UK. And it's the same thing where it's like unions are selfish and like they fight for their workers, and sometimes it aligns well with what you want as a citizen. You know, I think teachers unions, for example, they're a big force for like things that would also make the life of a child in school better, right? More resources for schools and stuff. There are some unions that are more controversial. Like I think most people would agree police unions can be a problem, right? Like you're like, what? That guy killed that dude and he's just on like desk duty for 6 months, you know? That's crazy. It's like, yeah, well, that's some union stuff. And I think what I see with the public transit unions is a parallel to the coal miners unions, where your goal as a society is to improve the environment, and the union is fighting you achieving that goal, right? So like we still have it today, to this day. Like Poland is in a lot of trouble with the EU because they have a lot of coal mining still, and they have very, very big and very strong coal mining unions, similar to a lot of the more the older EU countries. the old one, the former one, the UK used to have this, and those unions got broken or, you know, were made irrelevant by a transition across to different power sources and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's like this, there is this like, guys, you know, if we give them everything they want, we have less transit as a result, and the transit that we have is worse. We're taking 10 minutes longer to get to downtown. It's only running until midnight, and, you know, a lot of people, I'm sure, have been trapped in places because the metro's closed. These are all consequences of valuing a workforce over valuing the work that needs to be done. And yeah, like I find this parallel interesting. All right. I think this is your highest viewer stream to date. Oh God, people are watching this. Well, you know, whatever. Compared to other provinces, Quebec is surprisingly opposed to transit projects. I don't know. I mean, who is it? I mean, in the end, like, you look at some of the transit projects that get built and they're really stupid in other provinces, and a lot of people throw money at them. I think we definitely didn't realize a good deal when we saw one. Any thoughts on the new on-corridor contract signing details of a Go expansion? No, like I don't have strong opinions on. I'm not a transit guy. I'm gonna say this to people. I like transit. Transit is interesting to me as kind of like relevant things to like make improvements in the city or the structures and stuff. But I'm not like a. Yes, there's transit projects going on in the world, and like most of them, from when I investigate them, most of them are good. Generally, spending money on transit is a good idea. You know, the REM was awesome because it was money spent on transit so efficiently that we got tons of it quickly. You know, which I wish we got more of. All right, this will be the last one because I am tired. This may be a bit too technical, but don't trains require pretty wide turning radiuses? How cut and cover work if you have to follow roads that have pretty sharp turns? Do you bore turns only? Yeah, you have like, if you look at the existing metro, like almost all of that was cut and cover. You just follow the roads, and if you want to go that way, you get out of the metro at a transfer and you go that way, right? So if you took a street grid of Montreal, instead of building like a pink line that like hits all these things. You would just be like, one line there, and one line here, you know, instead. And if you're willing to viaduct it, you get even more. Okay, so that was my rant for the day. I hope you guys have a good evening. I do have a thing on here. I have a milestone on Patreon. When I reach 100 patrons, I will do a video in French. And I would like to do probably something around this in French. It is hard to do these videos because I don't make much money from them. Like I have to pay the bills, so then I have to go away and do commercial work sort of way. So yeah, do jump on there if you can. I think a lot of people, like I've had this happen, I've bumped into people and they're like, oh, I'll buy you a drink, I like your videos. And it's like, it costs like, it's $1 per creation and you can cap it at $1 a month. So don't buy me a fucking drink, just jump on Patreon. That will actually enable me to do this full time, you know? So yeah, anyway, I'm hoping that I can get to 100 patrons and then, you know, that will kind of let me make the RAM video, my French video, just in time for the elections. Either that or I'm hoping to do some more of the housing videos. And both of them are like, housing is another thing where it's like, this is the provincial government, this is the election for housing, this is the election for Yimby, you know, for like getting transit built and for getting housing built. So, you know, it is like, you know, people focus on the federal election a lot. Yeah, I think it's kind of like but people who are like less into politics are like, oh, federal election. But it's like the provincial election is where the right to build legislation and all that stuff can get passed. And yeah, so anyway, like I do want to tackle that. The French video is going to be a lot of work because I don't speak French very well, but I want to do more, you know. But to do more, I have to kind of justify doing a video that's going to take me like twice as long to do because of the language challenge, which makes the economics of it kind of difficult unless I have enough patrons. Anyway, that's the begging. People always tell me to do that, but I don't. But here it is. Yeah. Cool. I think that's everything. Good luck, everyone. I'm going to go relax a bit and then think about what to do on this guy. I think it's important to probably do a video on this at the very least, just summarizing everything for the public. God help us. I hope that we can fucking get this. I hope something good comes of this, you know? Brutal. Really rough. Anyway, no, you're not alone if you're not feeling great about how this has all gone down. And yeah, jump on the Yimby groups and I'll be on there to chit-chat about this shit. And, you know, we can hang out. And maybe if you don't want to support me on Patreon, you can just buy me that drink. Okay, bye everyone.